Thank you. Okay, so like I said, thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate your interest in applying for Tech Congress for our 2027 cohort coming up. And so I'm going to start out by asking the team who's on the call to introduce themselves. And then I'll go over a little bit about our theory of change, our mission and values for the organization, details about recruitment and selections. I'll get it into a little bit of how the fellowship works, although I'm sure we have so much detailed information about that on the website. And then Alina will talk about a couple of our alumni so you can get a sense of like what people did and then what they did after. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So to start out with, Alina, do you want to? Oh, let me start out with myself. I'm Grace McKinney. I'm the Deputy Director here at Tech Congress. I've been here for about 2 years. And I will turn it over to Alina to introduce herself first.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Alina. I'm the Senior Outreach and Program Manager of Tech Congress. I've been here for about 6 years. So really fortunate to see the program grow and excited for it to grow with this upcoming cohort. I primarily lead a lot of the recruitment and selections processes for Tech Congress. So I'll drop my email in the chat at the end of the info call, and feel free to email me if you have any like logistical questions about eligibility or the application.
And then Maya, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Maya. I'm the Program Associate here at Tech Congress. Thank you for joining us today. I've been with Tech Congress for about 2 years.
And then Timur, are you still on the call?
I
I think he
believe he
dropped.
is.
I think you yapped off. That's all of the team on the call right now. Yeah, so like I said, thank you all so much for joining us. Tech Congress, we have existed now we celebrated our 10-year anniversary last year, so 11 years. And we are really our mission behind existing and our theory of change is that out of the couple thousand staffers in Congress, we would say about we did these numbers fairly recently. Alina led that effort. By our count, about 3% have meaningful training or experience with technology. And so we believe that, especially increasingly, as technology is a part of more and more parts, like facets of life, we believe that pretty much every piece of legislation should, we would say that about for each piece of legislation that is introduced, probably about 10 people work on it. We think that one of those 10 people should be a technologist. So that would be, I think there's about 4,000 staffers currently in Congress. So we think there should be about 400 people in Congress with training or experience in technology. And of course, that's a really broad kind of brush is just technologists. And so I'll talk about this a little bit more as we get into it. But that is why we have started to identify a few specific verticals. But that's really our theory of change is we think that there needs to be more people with technology training in Congress so that when legislation is introduced and when it is passed, it takes into account the realities of technology because most at this point, so much legislation is going to have to contend with it in one way or another, even if it's not about it directly. And so the good news is that so by our count, I think it was about 120 people currently in Congress have that background. So we would love there to be a couple hundred more, and that's where you all come in. So for Tech Congress itself, we have three objectives for the fellowship, which is we want to foster and help educate cross-sector leaders. We want to catalyze Congress to realize that it has a tech deficit and then to hire accordingly, and also keep Congress itself up to date. We are non-ideological, so we're nonpartisan. We do not take positions on any issues except I guess that we think there should be more technologists in Congress, but that has not been a legislative issue as of yet. Um, And then diversity and inclusion are at the core of what we do. So Tech Congress encourages applicants from a range of backgrounds, experiences, and perspective, including those from underrepresented communities, in technology and in Congress, and why we're so adamant about having our cohorts be a balance between Democrat and Republicans, people serving in Democratic and Republican offices. And so that we try to build cohorts that are balanced in a lot of different ways, like people coming from different kinds of jobs before this and different kinds of specific like specialties. And that's why Congress does a lot of different stuff. So you kind of have to have people with a lot of different knowledge. Um, as I said, applications are due. We've extended the deadline, so applications are due at 11:59 p.m. Eastern on June 28th. That's when the applications will close. For eligibility, we accept to be eligible to apply, you need to be a citizen or a DACA recipient. Unfortunately, that's the only two categories that are eligible. We do have two tracks. One is our early career track. For if you have between 2 and 6 years of full-time experience, or in lieu of that, just graduated from a PhD or master's with a PhD or a master's degree. And then our mid-career track is 8 years plus of full-time experience. If you have 7 years of experience, please select both tracks on your application. And then we'll kind of assess and we'll talk about that with you once we get to through the interviews. U.S. veterans should include years of service in those calculations as well. So that definitely counts. And then internships do not count towards years of experience. And then I do want to address the use of AI in applications. I am not going to tell you not to use AI in your applications because that would be hypocritical and also pointless because we have no way to enforce that, obviously. But I just want to remind all of you that everyone has access to the same LLMs and the same Tech Congress website. So if you want your application to stand out, please use AI well, because I can't read the same 4 essays 7,000 times like I did last summer. It was driving me insane. And then please check out our frequently asked questions section on our website. It'll give you a lot of visibility into who we're looking for and more details about the verticals that I mentioned. And then also wanted to address, since we get this question a lot, on the application, it asks you to list your references, but just a heads up, we will not contact your references before letting you know. So we will definitely let you know before we contact your references. We just like to gather them ahead of time so we don't have to have that like lag time in between interviews and offers. And finally, I would encourage you all to read our our blog, and listen to. We have some podcast episodes that talk a lot about the organization and talk about the application. The blog, I would say, the blog posts in particular from our alumni are really useful and give you a good sense of like the kind of experience you could be signing up for. And also, we like to give this disclaimer, which is that I know that imposter syndrome can prevent great people from applying for jobs, and we don't want to miss out on working with you just because you don't have all of the very specific experience that I've outlined. So please apply. Um, and then, so let me get a little bit into how the fellowship itself actually works. This will be for the 2027 cohort, which will start in January. So the first 3 weeks will be orientation, where most of our fellows coming in don't have significant like policy or legislative experience. Which is fine. And that's like what this fellowship was designed for. So we spend those 3 weeks teaching you how to like be a staffer within Congress. So how to write a memo, how to draft an oversight letter, how to plan and execute on a hearing, that kind of thing. And then we also walk you through. So that is kind of what we would call like our tactical skills area. And we also walk you through like the kind of ecosystem around Congress, how it fits in with the executive branch. I don't really get into judicial, but they can just sue, basically. But really how Congress tends to interact with the executive branch. And as well as like just the whole ecosystem of like lobbyists and professional organizations and all of that kind of around Congress. And then the other track that we really focus on during orientation is like networking. So we really want to help you all. Many of our fellows coming in are, many of them are new to DC and don't. We want to act as like a sort of a starter kit for a network for you. If you like your time in Congress during the fellowship, we want you to feel set up to like continue in this space. So yes, we have a lot of like networking events with other organizations in the like other public interest tech organizations, as well as with our alumni. I think our alumni are one of our greatest resources for our fellows and for us. And this year as well, and we did this year and the year before, we'll likely do it again. We also did field trips to CRS, the Congressional Research Service, GAO, the Government Accountability Office, etc. So you can kind of get to know your resources before you get to the Hill. So those are the first 3 weeks, and that's orientation. And then the next 3 weeks is placement, which is where that's when you do what I often kind of describe as like a mini condensed job search. Which is where you're interviewing with offices to figure out where you're going to be. So our placement process is very fellow driven in that like we are not placing you in an office where we think you should be. We're trying to give you the information and the tools to help you figure out where you think would be the best fit for you based on your personality and like your career goals. And so to do that, we send out information and bios to chiefs of staff in the House and Senate and committee staff directors. And we also, and then we'll have you kind of think about the issues that you're particularly interested in focusing on. And I would say, like, we will ask you about the issues that you're interested in throughout the entire interview process. We keep asking because they tend to change the more people really think about it. And also, they tend to change from the beginning of orientation to the end. So we'll talk about this a lot, but once we get into placement, we'll ask you to sit down and really think about like the key issues that you're interested in and map out, and then we'll kind of help you map out like which offices correspond to those, like which committees, which personal offices have done work on it, that kind of thing, to help you figure out where you should start. Um, and you get several weeks to talk to top staffers in Congress about the issues that you care about. This is a really important time because obviously, it is how you end up with your placement for the rest of the year, but it also is how a lot of people like start their connections in Congress. Because if you are interested in like data privacy and you talk to every office that has worked on like has like a significant kind of stake in that portfolio, then once you get into your office, you at least you have some contacts in it already as well. And then also during placement, you will work with our alumni advisors. We assign each of our new fellows two alumni advisors each who have been in Congress recently to help you navigate conversations and like make connections. And we provide you with those resources. Um, that's orientation, that's placement. Um, and then the goal would be for you to start in your office by March 1st at the latest. Um, and so then for day to day, so I'm gonna go through some very vague um, what day to days look like. And it's vague because it really depends on where you are, both what office you get put in, whether it's a committee or a personal office, but also like what's happening in the country and in the news. So I'll give you kind of a brief overview here. Which is that largely you will be performing duties similar to other congressional staffers by applying your experience in technology to a variety of work, like researching relevant policymaking, interfacing with members and staff to educate them on a lot of these issues. We had a particular fellow who did like a ton of education on like healthcare cyber, and how, and kind of, that's such like sort of a complicated like combo. So she did a ton of that there. And then also writing legislation, preparing for committee hearings, markups, or investigations, including writing questions for witnesses, which is cool when you get to see someone ask your question in a hearing. And then, as well as leading coalitions with partners and other groups, both on the Hill and kind of tangential to the Hill, to, kind of start like moving things along. I would really encourage you to check out, like I said, our blog posts from our alums. They'll give you a really good examples of what people's work has been because it really varies. And so kind of it gives you like a good kind of constellation of experiences. I would say you should check out Joel Burke's Day in the Life blog post. And as well as Lars, his is really useful because he was on the Senate Small Business Committee and he has like a good example of using his like data skills as well as like in research, which the committee found super useful. And then also Crystal Grant, who worked for Senator Warren. And I think Maya's about to. I think Maya just dropped those in the chat. Thank you, Maya. And then throughout your fellow, so that's really like the main, that's most of your fellowship will be doing this work on the Hill. And then during the majority of your fellowship, we will have like ongoing programming. Our goal is to help you succeed. So we want to help you connect with people in Washington and in tech who we think can help you do that. So we try to do kind of like sort of three different types of events every quarter, which would be networking, one that's more like educational, which we sort of call our speaker series. And then the last one is like team bonding. So we kind of try to do like one of those per quarter vaguely. Um, and then we also offer, you'll have full, like access to our Slack, so you can contact our alumni. And then we also offer career coaching. You get 3 free sessions as a part of your fellowship with a career coach, which we really encourage. Like I would say, you probably you aren't really going to want to use until the second half of your fellowship, but we really kind of like kick that off for everyone in July. So it's coming up soon for our current fellows. Alina, do you want to talk about a couple of our outstanding alumni?
Yeah, so I'll highlight one of them, Allison Hutchings. She had a BS in engineering and an MS in aerospace engineering. And before the fellowship, she worked in an engineering firm where it was really cool. She had the opportunity to work on the James Webb Space Telescope. So she applied for the fellowship because she thought she'd do a tour in Congress. So, just doing like a year stint in Congress, and then go back to industry out west. But within a matter of months, she had said it's the best job she's ever had, and she wants to make a career in in government, building networks of technologists. And so that's exactly what she was kind of able to do throughout the first few months of her fellowship, where she served with Senator Schatz. She had led an investigation into the Boeing 737 MAX crashes. She had authored the first bipartisan bill to regulate facial recognition. And she was doing helping investigations on how Twitter, Facebook, Meta now, and Google were managing social media disinformation relating to the census. And then after her fellowship, she really leveraged the experience and kind of the passion that she found throughout her fellowship period in Congress, and she worked at GSA, the General Service Administration's Technology Transformation Services, which aim to design and deliver digital government with and for the people. So really just helping to like modernize digital infrastructure, specifically digital service delivery, like help improve mainly help to improve like capacity of technologists working in government. So I think that Allison is a really wonderful example of how we really want fellows to use this opportunity to see if Congress and policy is for them and to be able to use that to pivot their career and how they so choose. So as Grace will mention, some folks find that they love Congress. Some people find that they love government and working for government. And some people are like, that's not for me, but I still want to work in policy. And so that's really what we want to help with this fellowship is we want to give you a safety net where you can kind of explore all of these options and have the opportunity to make a really big impact on federal tech policy. And I'll actually pass it over to Grace to talk about kind of to expand on what I was saying about what fellows do after the fellowship.
Yeah. Yeah. So by our count, and I will say last year the count was weird. So that's my caveat. So by our count, about a third of our fellows tend to stay in government after the fellowship, whether that be in Congress or in like an agency, or even like we've had more, a couple of fellows like go to state governments. About a third go to nonprofit or like civil society, so nonprofits or academia. And then about a third go tend to go like back to private sector. But even like one of our alums like who went back to private sector, like he has gotten really involved in his like in his like local city council. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that we're trying to cultivate cross sector leaders, as we think that people should understand government more. People in government should understand tech more. Um, so that's what everyone does after. Oh, and then last year it was a little bit. Oh, so here's what I will say. So usually, out of our cohorts, I would say two-ish, an average of about two people end up staying in Congress. I would say generally more people want to stay in Congress, but it gets difficult because Congress is operating on extremely thin budgets, which is for weird political reasons that we can get into at some point, and will during orientation. But so often about an average of two people stay in Congress. But last year we had a bunch of people who didn't go to the executive branch because there were so many hiring freezes. We actually ended up with six people getting hired on full time from last year's cohort into Congress. So we'll see what happens this year, but I'm hoping that the trend continues. So for the I'm just going to go a little bit through like what we look for, a little bit of details about the selections process, and then we'll move on to Q&A. So what we're looking for in the selections process is like tech ability, so experience with technology. That could be as a software engineer, as a product manager. We have someone this year who's like a UX designer. So there's definitely different. And then we also have had people with like less traditional backgrounds as well. Uh, and so then tech translation, that is like, I'm not going to say the most important, but potentially the most important aspect, which is like, can you take technical concepts and explain them to non-technical people? That is like most of what this job is basically. Also, ability to work well on teams. Congress is like each office certainly has its own culture, but you're going to want to really like integrate yourself into the team and be able to do that. And then also we want this, and then finally what we're looking for is like, is this a career catalyst? And as in, would this fellowship fundamentally change the arc of your career? And I bring this up because we do have people who apply sometimes who have experience working on the Hill. And I just want to be like upfront, which is that like, you may be totally qualified and we may consider you, but your application will be moved lower down for people who are just as qualified and don't have that experience. So like if you've interned on the Hill, not that I would say that does not count. But if you've like worked on the Hill like as a full-time staffer, that's where it kind of gets into like we're just a little bit less likely to bring you on just because other people will move ahead of you. But not impossible, and we have had fellows with that experience. And then this year we have expanded verticals, which is us kind of trying to expand like what like constitutes a technologist, because you'll notice like as I've laid all of this out, what we aren't looking necessarily for people who like know how to code. Um, like some of our fellows do, but not everybody does. So we have had fellows from like less traditional tech backgrounds. Like for example, we had a journalist who had a ton of experience, like many years covering tech policy. We've had someone come in with like biotech. And then also we had several fellows come in with climate oriented, like climate tech oriented experience. And so this year we've expanded verticals to kind of codify a little bit of that. And also because these are areas that we're seeing based on the last several years, these are areas that we think we're seeing like demonstrated interest from Congress, which is climate tech, digital service delivery. So that usually means like within government, although not necessarily federal, like science, such like kind of like meta science, like R&D, and then oh, right, sorry, and then innovation and research. So, yeah, so those are our expanded verticals for this year. Fundamentally, we are looking for people who understand how technology works and are able to break it down to people who are non-technical. So if that sounds like you, please apply. And that's the end of my scripted spiel. Let's get into Q&A.
One person just asked, given the 1 in 10 technologist ratio you'd like to see in Congress, with 20 fellows in a cohort, are there other organizations filling this gap with partnerships? Is Tech
Hmm.
Congress also working outside of the fellowship to get closer to that vision?
Oh, that's a good question. There are definitely other organizations that have fellowships that place technologists in. So AAAS has a like AI specific fellowship. There's the like Horizon Institute. They have some congressional fellows. They do a lot of agency fellowships as well. Um, but in terms of like what else are we doing? Right now, that's what we're doing right now, like, is the big thing that we did this year was that Alina and several of our interns spent hours and hours and hours and hours stalking all current congressional staff to see who has those backgrounds to get like a as clean of a count as we could, like in a snapshot, which is how we got the number that we have. So that's kind of where we're at now is figuring out how to measure it. Beyond that, I mean, we really want to engage the people who are currently on the Hill and we don't really know who are doing this work, and kind of hear from them how they think we could help. Because, like I said, like a big barrier here is the ability for offices to bring the number of full-time staff that officers can bring on, usually because of resource, usually budget, but sometimes literal desk space. So, what else are we doing? We're kind of figuring that out right now.
Someone asked about if their expertise doesn't fall under one of the verticals, which I answered in the chat, but I'll just reiterate for everyone. It's totally fine if your expertise does not fall into one of the verticals. We're looking for up to 2 fellows this year, but in most cases, our fellows' experience does not fall under them, so you are totally fine.
Up to 2 fellows in each vertical. And that won't be the total number of fellows. So there will be fellows. So we keep saying expanded verticals because the way we're thinking about it is we're kind of like expanding what was our definition. So if you don't fall into any of these verticals, that's not a problem at all. I would say about half of the cohort won't fall into these verticals.
Yeah, I
And you
would
don't
encourage
need
you
to
to.
go
Oh, wait,
ahead.
sorry, Grace.
No, go ahead.
I would just encourage you all to think about it as like kind of like what Grace mentioned. Like for a while, we only looked at people like with this expertise, and all of these people here, we were like, okay, we're not sure about Congress's appetite. We're not sure if we can guarantee them like a strong placement. Like, how can we support folks with these kinds of backgrounds? And so now we're kind of like widening the aperture of who we're looking for, to include folks here, like in climate tech, to talk more about government innovation, research science innovation, which includes like meta science and like research procedures in federal agencies like FDA and NIH. So we are looking for folks now, whereas before we'd be like, okay, we would prefer someone with a more traditional STEM background or tech background with like computer science, software engineering, math, physics, engineering, all of that stuff. So yeah.
Someone asked, is every applicant offered the initial 15 to 20-minute interview?
No, we can't do that, unfortunately.
And then another person asked, is being enrolled in an MPP or MPA program helpful at all?
I mean, it's certainly helpful in that it certainly adds to your resume. It's not in any way required.
And those are all the questions in the chat. Oh, someone just asked another one. Can the policy memo aspect of the application take the form of a proposal for a new technology or system?
Hmm. You want to take that, Alina?
Yeah, I would say this is on like a policy memo. So it's not, I wouldn't say it's like, even though you're proposing like a policy issue, like you're proposing something for policy, but you're not proposing like for Congress, for example, to adopt a new technology within Congress, if that makes sense. So for example, like things that would fall under like tech policy issues um, would be like cybersecurity of medical devices with, with that use Bluetooth. It would be um, like the use of facial recognition for like in the criminal justice system. It could be what's it called? Like regulating deepfakes or children's online safety or talking about like chatbots and children's online safety with that. What we wouldn't count as like a tech policy issue would be like raising awareness about the use of AI, like creating an education campaign around how to use AI technologies or how like the workforce should be shored up to have like people should be retrained in AI to create a more sustainable workforce. Those are very important issues, but they're more kind of like labor focused or focused on a different issue rather than like being a tech policy issue at its core. So like an example that could intersect, I think one of our fellows came into it and she wrote about like the use of algorithms for evaluating like insurance
Right.
costs for housing in like high flooding zones, like high flooding risk zones. Very specific topic, but it has to do with tech policy. But if someone's like Congress should adopt this like cybersecurity practice, that's not exactly like a tech policy issue that Congress is legislating on for their constituents. I hope that makes sense, that distinction, but that's how I would make that distinction. And I will say also, like, the more specific you get is better. We had a lot of folks last year write about AI. There's so many things within AI. Like,
Yeah.
you can't just, write a general essay about AI. And so, like, we really want to know how you are as a communicator, what issues you care about, how you can translate technical concepts. So, really, I put this in the chat, really highly, highly encourage you all to use your policy essay as the way to show your technical translation skills. Break down, like, imagine that your audience, I mean, is a senator, but like maybe double check it by like talking to a family member who doesn't know anything about tech. Or like, I like to run things by like my 14-year-old cousin and be like, does this make sense? If it doesn't make sense to him, then I'm not doing a good job communicating. So definitely encourage you all to use your policy essay to show off your skills. And I've been rambling, so I'm going to go off on mute now.
No, I think that was good, and you answered another question that was in the chat. So,
What's the timeline for the application review process?
mhm.
As in, around when should we expect to hear back on whether we've made it through to the interview round?
Yeah, do you want to take that one too, Alina?
Um, awesome. So I'll go a little bit over, Grace mentioned a little bit about the selections process. I'll give a little, we'll publish this on our site a little bit later once applications close, but you all can get the little exclusive since you're in this call. But typically our selections process has multiple stages. So the first stage, after everyone submits their application, is application review. Then we'll go through first round interviews, which is about a 20-minute phone call, like screening interview. And Grace and myself will be on that call. That is why also I will caveat, if you email us with questions about like for help for your application, we cannot help you because we are on the selections committee. Then after round one interviews will be round two interviews. Those will be 45-minute video interviews conducted over Zoom. And then sometimes potentially there's a round three interview, sometimes there's not. Then we'll do reference checks and offers. And so we're hoping to, this year we're implementing a process to keep applicants a lot like to communicate more with applicants about what stage they are in the application process.
Last year we had way more applications than we had ever had before, and we were overwhelmed, and our communication could have been better. So this year we have a plan.
Absolutely. So we have a plan. So you should get like kind of frequent communications. We also do send rejection emails at the end of the process. So you will get a response from us and you will know about your status. I would say that we're hoping to get the cohort finalized by mid to end November. We want to give people probably mid-November, honestly. We want to give people time to relocate if they have to relocate, if they're located outside the DC area. But yeah, and I would also say like you'll have like my email throughout. And so I like my email, Maya, Grace, like me and Maya are always happy to respond and just give you an update if it's been a couple like a few weeks and you haven't heard from us. But yes, I hope that illuminated a little bit about the application review process.
Someone asked if we take internationally based applicants.
So if you're applying because you live internationally, yes, totally. However, to be eligible, you need to be either a citizen of the United States or a DACA recipient, unfortunately, government. So, um, yeah. But if you're applying just because you live in another country, yeah, for sure.
Um, have you noticed any skills, habits, or quirks that past fellows have brought from technical backgrounds that made the transition to working with Congress more difficult? If so, what
Mm.
were they, and how have you helped fellows adjust?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I would say a couple things. So I would say what I notice you often is difficult for people in the transition is people coming from like more often people coming from like the private sector, if you're working on like building a product, the way that that work works is so different than the way that work in Congress works because like you can track your progress and your team's progress. Like you know if you have shipped something on time, you know how many bug fixes you've done, like you can track all of that. And in Congress, like your work is so difficult to track. That's actually why, so this year, well, it's part of the reason, but this year we instituted, we're having fellows do monthly, like kind of short reports to us, just a little bit about like what they've done that month, because we have found that people really have trouble when it's time for them to update their resume at the end, because like what you've done just it doesn't result in a thing in the same way. So that's where I would say I see people struggle at first because I think people just feel like they are doing a bad job or they're like not doing enough. But that's it. Like that's the job is like having conversations and writing memos and trying to get people to read those memos and yeah. Um, and then the other thing that I would say is in terms of like what has made people has made it a little bit more difficult for people to transition is I think that um, this is for our specifically our like mid to senior career fellows. I think it can be a little difficult if you're coming because you know our mid career pipeline is 8+ years, but like I mean we've had people like we had someone a couple cohorts ago with like 25 years of experience. So like you know, 8 is but the minimum. And so I do think it can be a little difficult sometimes for people, especially people who have a ton of experience, like management experience, to come in as a novice. Like you have technical expertise, but you are learning a completely new skill and environment in terms of Congress. So I think that can just sometimes like again kind of make people feel like they aren't doing a good job when they are. So yeah.
In addition to the health insurance supplement that Congress provides, is there a general parental leave or childcare policy, or is that dependent on the placement office or committee?
We do have, so I will say, since this is a 1 year fellowship, we don't have parental leave in like the traditional sense. Like we don't offer like 3 months of parental of like paid parental leave because this is like, you know, you can theoretically plan around this. I forget exactly what our policy is. But if you reach out to Alina directly, we can send you this the specific policy.
Yes. And I would also say some offices sorry, office to office is dependent. It's dependent on office to office. Whew, my word, sorry.
Also that, yeah.
So for example, we had one fellow whose office granted him paternity leave. We had another fellow who had young kids and was like, I really need to be home by like 6:30 every night to like, do dinner and put the kids to bed. And so they were able to find something that was more consistent. I would say like remote work exceptions are very, very unlikely.
Yeah.
Like Congress is at its core an in-person institution.
It's the
Uh,
most in-person institution that I know of currently operating.
Yeah, and they're very like this is also why we have the clothing stipend because they wear business professional a lot of the times, and business professional is very expensive to accumulate. But yeah, I would say it's like office to office dependent, but if there's like particular things that you're kind of weighing that you're wanting to prioritize or wanting to have us help you prioritize, we'll like kind of work through that during placement and with your alumni advisors to help you figure out where the best fit would be.
You mentioned being home by 6:30 as an example. Do fellows report working into the evening often just during key crunch times or 365 days?
I wouldn't say 365 days, but this is again, and this is going to be our answer to a lot of these, like, how does it work day to day? The answer is it really depends. It depends on the office a lot. I will say, and this is something that I tell people during orientation and especially during placement, is like, if you want to work for someone who's a big name, you're going to keep big name hours, is what I'll say for that. So, like, and that's kind of I think that that's the trade-off. And that's like we had someone who worked for Pelosi's office when she was still speaker. And that was like really the conversation as she was making that final placement decision was like, do you want to work a lot for a year? And she did, and she did great. And like she really made it happen for that year. But that was like, that's just like, you kind of got to know the reality of what you're signing up for. Other offices have much more reasonable hours most of the time, but then won't for like a very specific amount of time, which is sometimes like on the calendar, like during appropriations or something like that. And then sometimes it's more random. But yeah, so it definitely really depends. And if that is something, but that said, like as Alina mentioned, we've had a lot of fellows who are parents and like need to be home by a certain amount of time, at least a certain number of days a week. And like that is something that you are going to want to, that will kind of talk you through how to approach and how to select for yourself during placement.
Just to confirm, the policy memo should not be a proposal for the government to help build or fund a tech project like Stargate AI infrastructure.
Yes.
Yes. And I would say that could be a recommendation, like a
Yeah.
solution that you propose
Yes.
in your memo. But yeah, I hope that helps.
Do fellows have to travel with Congress? Who Congress senators or representatives they are assigned to if they travel when Congress is in recess?
No, not at all. So you will be a staffer for their DC office, and representatives and senators have like their staff for their home offices. So you won't have to travel, but we do have a travel stipend for each fellow, and we really do recommend visiting the district. If possible. But that's more like with your office. But that's also, it's certainly not required and that's very like, you can kind of plan that ahead of time and everything. Yes. So no, you won't be traveling with them during recess. You'll be in DC. And oh, and I will say too, we also like I just was talking about, how you should if you want to work for a big name, you may have to, be ready to work a ton of hours. We also do encourage you to take vacation, particularly there's an April recess, it's a couple weeks, and then the August recess is usually a full month. So we really encourage people to like plan vacation time during those two times, particularly during August. It's pretty dead. A lot of times people think that they're like, I want to get the most out of my fellowship. I don't want to take vacation. And then by like the third week, they're like, why am I here? No one else is. So we do definitely encourage you to take some time off, but to plan it out.
Congress during recess is also really fun because usually like it's a business professional, like attire environment. And during recess, you'll see people walk around like Birks or Tivas or something. And
Yeah.
you're like, whoa.
Yeah, we also had a fellow who had a Dogs of the Senate Instagram for a little while, because people were bringing their dogs in during August, especially, which was very cute.
Yeah, August is a great time to like and during any of the recess periods, but because August is like very long recess period, it's a great time to like catch up on any like research you've been wanting to do for your office. It's a great time to have coffee chats and really like cultivate those connections, especially because it is in the second half of the fellowship. So, in around July, we typically have an event where or in a call where we encourage fellows to start thinking about the next step after the fellowship, whether it's you want to make it known that you want to stay in your office, whether you want to start looking at other offices, whether you want to work in executive branch or where you want to go and what you want to do. And so coffee chats during August are like also a great way to build your network and kind of figure out what comes next for you.
What references do you like to see? Professors, employers, etc.
Oh, that's a good question. Do you have like a succinct answer to that, Alina?
Honestly, just anyone who can like talk about you and your work, and can speak to like who you are as a person, and an employee or someone who they've worked with or you've worked under or any of that. Yeah, I would just say anyone who can like know
Also,
you well.
someone who's going to be available.
Yes,
Because we
that's what
definitely have, I just like, it'll just hold up your application if we have to come back to you because we couldn't get a hold of them.
Another one is, as someone who is in between the two fellowship programs, 7 years of experience, how should someone formulate their application? Should it be more towards the one that you want to get into or the one you think you are qualified for? And how do you guys place those people if selected? Is it just that they get lumped in with the rest of the cohort you guys place them in, or will there be a specific part of the program for them?
Um, I would say in practice, the two, like the early career and the mid to senior career track, essentially the same. Like it's different when you're in your office because you obviously have like a different experiences but it's also that's going to, someone with 9 years of experience is going to have it will be different in their office versus someone with 20 and they're technically like they're in the same track. So like our fellows do the same events, like that's um, and you really don't need to tailor your application one way or the other. So if you have 7 years of experience, just select both, and then we'll determine for you which track we're placing you into, and we'll let you know that. But it doesn't like it shouldn't affect like your policy essay or like your motivations essay. So I would say, yeah, just if you have 7 years of experience, select both, and then we'll let you know where you land.
Do fellows generally arrive sometime between acceptance and orientation? I've read that there are a few resources available for housing. Is that essentially DIY for each fellow to figure out their own housing?
Yeah, so we will want everyone to be have arrived in DC by the first day of orientation. The first day of orientation is going to be in person unless there's like a huge blizzard, but it will be planned to be in person at least. So you will need to find your own housing. We do offer a $2,000 stipend to cover January's like 1 month's or to go towards 1 month of rent. And we offer that for people who already live in DC and for people who are relocating. So some people will kind of I know several people who they've done like a couple Airbnbs over the course of January so they can kind of try out different neighborhoods, or sometimes people just like find an apartment, and then we also offer $2,000 relocation stipend if you are moving from elsewhere. If you're already in DC, you don't get the relocation, you just get the 1 month rent help.
Someone asked, let's say you finished high school and have years of experience in software development via freelancing. Is it sufficient?
Yeah, you don't need to have a college degree. Just like make sure to like note everything really clearly on your resume.
Are there restrictions on non-congressional activities for fellows? For
Mhm.
example, can you have meetings with private sector folks or do things like public writing within the bounds of the ethics rules?
Oh, that's a really good question. We should actually probably add something about this into the script because I feel like we do get this. Um, In terms of like meetings with private sector folks, you're going to have a lot of meetings with private sector folks. That's like a lot of what congressional staffers do. So that's totally fine. There are definitely like specific restrictions. There's like weird specific ethics rules around like attending events if they're in any way tangentially related to Congress. There's also some like specific gifting rules if you're like accepting gifts from someone who's like not a family member. And we have like a whole ethics training with our lawyers like during orientation to really get into the nuances there. I will say the writing thing is a really good call out because um, you would need to run any public writing by your offices before you publish it. Most fellows choose not to do that because it's really annoying, to be honest. And some offices say no, and some offices do say yes, and it's totally fine. So it really depends. Um, we do definitely ask you to like leading up to plate. Like I would say like you kind of want to really narrow your online presence leading up to placement because it's just like you don't want to be interviewing with an office where like you're really aligned with them on most issues, except not on one, and you just published like a Substack about it 2 weeks ago, like disagreeing with them, because then they're not gonna hire you. So yeah. And we do ask fellows to be, we really recommend people make their social media private for the duration of the year. It's just a lot easier. Yeah.
I would
It's not,
also,
go
oh,
ahead.
sorry. No, go for it.
It's okay.
I would also caveat that we have had a lot of people coming from academia where they had
Yeah.
papers that are being scheduled to be published or like they already have like writing engagements or like or sorry, speaking engagements at like conferences, for example. For those, you just let your office know anything that's like been published right before or like
Mhm.
has been scheduled to be published while you're a fellow is fine. As long as you know, let your office know that it's on the horizon. And then they'll also probably just ask you to just like caveat any, public speaking engagements you have to do with like my views are my own, they're not my office's views. But like if you're actively like writing an op-ed during, your fellowship, that's when it gets like really
That-
kind of,
That's
yeah,
probably gonna get a no.
yeah, because then it's like someone like a journalist can look at the op-ed and be like, oh, like Grace is with this office. Grace said this is the office's stance.
Exactly. They'll say like this is the opinion of the office when
Yes.
it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking engagements, that's a good call out too, Alina. Speaking engagements are usually totally fine. You just, yeah, we'll have to include like a caveat.
Our LinkedIn profile was asked on the application. Do you suggest that we remove the link or shut down the page?
No, I mean LinkedIn should be fine. And like especially like you really don't need to worry too much about it. I would say like especially because LinkedIn is theoretically professional. Um and if there's and what I will say is like once we get through orientation, if there's anything like around placement, like say you do like if you have a pretty active like Substack, for example, that you like promote on your LinkedIn or something like that, or like a blog that you promote that you post about on your LinkedIn in all likelihood, it's probably going to be totally fine. But if there's like anything that you're worried about, and again, like when I say worried, I really mean kind of like misalignment on issues with offices. We can talk about that like specifically. And like you may just want to like take an article down for the year and then you can put it back up. But I don't think anyone's actually done that. So. It's not as kind of like scary as I hope I'm not like making it sound like scary or like your people are going to go through like your entire internet like presence or anything like that. It's more just that we want to make sure that no one's like limiting their options when it comes to placement inadvertently.
Yeah, or like no one's, accidentally like going to be speaking on behalf of the office if you like
Yeah.
post something on your Instagram or if you're like I can't believe this congressperson voted for this. And then you go and you interview with that office. Like, okay,
Yeah, that's not going to go over well.
yeah. But yeah, I would say it's mostly just for like kind of, we have these rules in place to just like protect you as a fellow. Most of the times it's like fine. It's just like a protective measure that we have for fellows.
And those are all the questions in the chat.
Great, good timing. Thank you, everyone, again for coming to this info call. I hope that this was helpful. And I hope to see your application come in. Yeah, and thank you so much. And like I said, if you have anything really like any like specific situation that you want to dig into, you can email Alina and we'll get back to you. But other than that, I hope to see your application.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Have a great rest of your
you.
evening.